Europe and Africa have a long and interconnected history, shaped by colonialism, trade, cultural exchanges, and political relations. A silent war has been waged for decades. It's not just a struggle for resources or territory, but a battle for the very soul of nations. Western nations have frequently turned to extreme means in their unrelenting quest for dominance to hold onto their grip on power. Tales of African leaders who dared to resist and paid the ultimate price are tainted throughout history. 3 visionaries whose flames burned out too soon: Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, and Patrice Lumumba of the Congo. However, these ashes raise a new generation of revolutionaries. These leaders uphold the principles of liberty and self-governance with courage and determination. But even as they hold their ground, they confront a long-standing foe who might already be planning their demise. In this video, we are going to see how Europe begged Africa for an alliance but failed in their quest. We are also going to talk about the current state of the African Union. Make sure you watch this video to the end to uncover the story. For months now, the West has been everywhere, which leads one to believe that they fear losing influence in Africa. Without the wealth of Africa, Europe would be powerless. The ongoing global power shift poses a threat to European officials, particularly in Africa, where Russia's influence has recently increased to maintain its dominance and China's has steadily gained ground. When the African Climate Change Summit was held in September in Nairobi, Kenya, the President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, unfortunately, made the offer to be a friend of Africa. What was her offer, and why did this attempt fail? As the continent most affected by climate change, von der Leyen stated at the outset of the summit that it was a significant step toward the recently concluded COP28 meeting. It will ensure that Africa's voice is heard globally and that its goals are appropriately considered. COP28 was the 28th annual United Nations climate meeting, where governments discussed how to limit and prepare for future climate change. She continued, saying, "Today, I'm not only here to listen to you, but also to offer Europe's help at COP28 so that we can work together on all the issues that are on the desk." Even though the appearance of our two continents is drastically different when it comes to combating climate change, we have similar concerns. We discussed this subject a lot. She informed them that in addition to listening to the African leaders, she was also there to deliver the offer from Europe. She stated that Europe came forward as a friend of Africa at the COP28 meeting in the UAE, which was just over. There's a good chance that the West, including France and the UK, have never once paid attention to Africa. Instead, they only work to get their plans and ideas across Africa. Even when things look bad, they always have deals, and as we all know, these deals always favor Europe over the other continent. Why should Europe and Africa be friends? That is the query we have. Why did Africa turn down this person's friendship? For many years, African nations have been viewed by European nations not as friends, but rather as resources to be exploited. They have been perceived as unbuffered gold mines of uranium that should be mined. European countries continue to exploit Africa's natural resources in the present day. For instance, oil and gas extraction is a significant area of exploitation. Countries like Nigeria, Angola, and Libya have been major suppliers of oil to European nations. European companies, including multinational corporations, are involved in the extraction and export of these resources. According to Ursula von der Leyen, Europe was making this deal so that Africans could be heard. Considering that Africa is larger than Europe and consists of 54 countries, it currently possesses the majority of the world's significant natural and economic resources. If African leaders are struggling to express their ideas and opinions on the international stage with Europe's assistance, which many see as Africa's enemy, it raises questions about whether they are qualified to hold such positions. If cooperation is required to get African opinions heard globally, it should come from a source that shares more of the interests and values of the continent rather than from Europe, which has a history of exploiting others. Africa does not depend on these nations because it has an abundance of resources and a diverse range of nations. It shouldn't need assistance from other nations, particularly in Europe. Ursula von der Leyen continued looking for means to show that Europe understood the goals of Africans and were willing to support them, saying, "We hear you, President Ruto and dear friends, when you say that growing your economy and lifting as many people out of poverty as you can is Africa's top priority. You're absolutely correct. A part of the solution is combating climate change. Other components of the solution include your vast potential for clean hydrogen production and green energy, your valuable raw materials, your stunning natural surroundings and wildlife, and your youthful workforce. Together, these components can help clean up energy systems and supply lines worldwide, as well as provide good jobs and economic changes for your people. This partnership benefits both the continent of Africa and the rest of the world. For instance, expanding Africa's clean energy sector will accelerate the continent's transition to solar and wind power. In a few years, Africa could create twice as much employment in the energy sector and produce enough renewable energy to power the continent and export to other nations." As was previously mentioned, the actions of the West demonstrate that they don't care about Africa and are only interested in themselves. Even though Western countries have historically been involved in environmental issues, now that they have developed, they want developing countries to concentrate on fighting climate change instead of economic growth. Her description of her proposed win-win collaboration gives the impression that it is more advantageous for Europe than for everyone else. She continued her speech by saying that one of the key factors boosting Africa's economy was climate action, but the continent required significant investment, and Europe wished to work with them to close the investment gap. She claimed that they had been chatting endlessly for a long time without taking any action. Von der Leyen stated, "We want to work with you to build local value chains and good jobs here in Africa. We're not just interested in getting resources." This furthered her point. "We aim to help people in the area become better at what they do, so we'd like to show you some European technology." This is very important for young people, because the better you are as suppliers, the more Europe will shift its supply lines to Africa, which will make both of our economies less risky. We are not only interested in extracting resources. Do they want to show Africans technology? Or they want Africans to show them more resources to exploit? She made her major point, which was that maintaining Africa as a supply of inexpensive raw resources and materials was Europe's primary objective. As she indicated, their planned cooperation is intended to allow them to continue exploiting Africa, and they are still focused on taking resources from the continent. Any other objective appears like a side project that won't receive any attention as long as Europe can simply and affordably obtain resources from Africa. This von der Leyen speech asserts that Europe would be worthless without the wealth that comes from Africa. Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso has seen what the West is trying to do in his country and is taking strict measures. Other African countries like Niger and Mali are also seeing the need to stop the West from exploiting their countries. In a significant move, Niger revoked its military cooperation agreement with the European Union. This decision, announced on December 4th by the Nigerian government, comes amidst escalating tensions between the West and Russia in the Sahel region. The move threatens to upend the EU's strategy to engage with Niger as an ally in the troubled region. Niger's populace is growingly disapproving of Western nations, especially France, which keeps a sizable military presence in the country. This attitude is a result of claims that Western troops have violated human rights, irritation at ongoing insecurity, and what is believed to be neocolonialism. The military regimes in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have come together in the face of protracted jihadist insurgencies to support the creation of an alliance of Sahel states, which will strengthen economic ties and mutual defense cooperation. The G5 anti-jihadist group in Africa's Sahel area has seen Burkina Faso and Niger resign with Mali, dealing a severe blow to the war against terrorists in one of the most unstable regions of the globe. The G5 currently consists of just Chad and Mauritania, both of which get significant funding from the EU for their military operations. What is the AU doing? The African Union is a continental union consisting of 55 member states located on the continent of Africa. The AU was officially launched in 2002 as a successor to the Organization of African Unity. The stated mission of the AU is to achieve greater unity and solidarity among African countries and peoples, to defend state sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence, to accelerate African states' political and socioeconomic integration, and to promote and defend African common positions on issues of concern to the continent and its peoples. But are they doing so? Strengthening governance and promoting democratic practices remain important challenges for the AU. Some African countries face issues related to corruption, human rights abuses, and a lack of accountable institutions. The AU's weakest sector continues to be economic development. The goal of the new Partnership for Africa's Development was to create an indigenous framework of policies for sustainable economic growth. Its objectives include bringing Africa into line with the global economy, encouraging growth, and eliminating poverty. Some Africans argue that the AU is always concerned when there are very few problems in the continent, but when the real problems come, they shy away. Most of the coups going on now are a result of Africans standing up and saying no to the West, especially France. The AU is aware that France is exploiting African countries, but has done nothing so far. How then are they making African countries great? Africans need to stop thinking about what the other places want, what China wants, and what Europe wants, and start the process of generating Africa's narrative. Africa does not need the President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, to sugarcoat words, and they later find themselves in the very pit they have always been. There is no end in sight to the millions of civilians in South Sudan who are still being killed, displaced, and sexually abused. Praying for world peace or asking the West for help is not enough. The AU needs to change its approach to dealing with grave crimes against humanity and other violations of human rights that take place during armed conflict. It also needs to learn how to make Africa a better continent rather than asking for help every time a situation comes up. By its actions and words, the AU must be seen as standing with people who are fighting for justice and their rights, not the other way around. Speaking of peace without guaranteeing human rights and justice carries the risk of becoming a justification for capitulation. We keep striving for a better African continent. We have come to the end of this video. What can the AU do to better Africa? Let us know what you think in the comments. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel. Make sure you turn on notifications too, so you never miss out on any new video. Thanks for watching, and see you in our next video.